PE's #1 Christian contemporary station, Kingfisher FM.
A while ago, I heard mention that Brendan Locke was going to be leaving Joy to the Nations Church here in the Bay, and I was quite surprised about it and thought, I need to maybe get this gentleman in over here. Today, we're very privileged to have both Brendan as well as Glenn Weiss, who'll be taking over the reins over there, just to come and share a little bit about how God has been working in their life and ministry and what's been going on behind the scenes with coronavirus. I think we're all a little bit unawares of what's happening in the community. So to Brennan and to Glenn, thank you, chaps, for coming in this afternoon. It's great to have you.
No, lovely to be with you, and afternoon to listeners.
Thanks, Ethan. It's always great to be. It's been a while, eh?
It's been a while, and I think for you guys as well, it's been a while that this whole process has been played out, and we're privileged and blessed to still have your... have you guys here? I think the church is also grateful for that as well.
Thank you so much.
So maybe you can just kick it off for us a little bit, Brennan. Just how long have you been with Joy to the Nations?
17 years in November of this month, 17 years.
Oh.
So, yeah.
It's like...
32 and now 50.
And now he's old.
Yes.
It's like handing over a child.
It is very... That's probably the best description. It's like giving away your daughter. Yeah. Probably the best description,
Well, it's going to be a little bit more affordable than that, hopefully, if you were going to give away the hand in marriage.
I guess it depends what culture you come from, Ethan.
Yeah, true, hey? Yeah, well, the Joy to the Nations culture. Tell us a little bit, Brennan, where did this whole call come from to sort of lay down the church and hand it over to Glenn?
So, August 2018, which is, 2 years ago, we were part of our leadership time in Port Elizabeth at Glenn's church, and as we walked into that time, I said to Tash, God's going to speak to us, and it wasn't anything that we had been talking about. And in that time, a lady who's part of our network came up to us and said, God's going to uproot you and it's going to come easily. And so when people start to speak like that, you just listen, you write it down. And then about a month later, we were in Joburg for our New Covenant international time. And a friend of ours with a prophetic gift came and said, I feel God's going to relocate you. And so we said, thank you. And then the next day he came...
That's the correct response?
Yes. And the next day he came to us and he said he actually felt that God had given him a country. So I had a few maybe in my heart. And he said he had actually run it by 2 leaders, so it wasn't just a Lone Ranger kind of word. And he said the word New Zealand. And as he said the word New Zealand, my heart just sunk. For a nation that is just at the end of the world, it's an island, it's small, I really despise the All Blacks. But these prophetic words, I just went home and I just said, Lord, I'm listening. And then I said to the Lord, you're a good father. I have no desire to go to this nation, but I would like a specific gift if you want me to go, not out of testing you, but just because we can have some fun, because this is just a crazy word. And I asked for an All Black rugby jersey, and I didn't tell anyone, including my wife. And we just left that, didn't talk about it, didn't pray about it. We weren't pondering the word, we weren't asking God. And then about 6 months later, my sister bought me a book called The Story of the All Black Rugby Jersey. And so we said, okay, Lord, this is just really funny, because I asked for an All Black Rugby jersey and you gave me a book about the jersey. And we started to work with the team, and they said, well, come over to New Zealand and let's begin the conversation. And on the last night that we were there, the brother of an All Black rugby player came and said he felt God tell him to give me something, and he gave me an All Black rugby jersey.
Word.
And whilst those are all things, it's much greater than that, but I really feel, Ethan, that just God interrupted our life. It wasn't something we were grasping for or searching for or going for.
Sure. That's quite something to digest. And I guess at the end of the day, we've always got to be open to hear what he says, and sometimes he really will disrupt things and sort of mess up the whole plan that we had. I guess 2020 is one of those years.
Yeah, exactly.
So then we sort of throw the ball over to the proverbial rugby ball over to Glenn over here. Glenn, when did you sort of come into the picture?
So Brennan kept this all to himself. He can tell you that we are sharing the story from our different perspectives. I think it was October, November last year, 2019, so a year ago. Brendan approached myself and said that they felt that their season was coming to an end for him and Tash of leading Joy, and that he felt that Corin and myself were the couple to lead Joy. So we took some time to pray. Brendan said, you shouldn't need to pray about something like that. If you remember correctly, in a certain coffee shop in Walmer, you should know. And of course, the immediate thing in my heart was just jumping up and down, because God had spoken to me clearly in my walk. I mean, we've been at Storehouse for 20 years, and God has shaped us and prepared us for such a time as this. In many ways, we've been full time for 11 of those years at the Storehouse. But God had always said to me that I would lead a church. It was something he'd spoken, and I held on to that. But he had never asked me to plant a church. There were times when you try and you want to take things into your own hands almost. I'm not a young man anymore either. We're both 50, so we could 50. Be twins or brothers, So one 50-year-old gives over to another, a swimmer to a runner. But anyway, so when the offer came, it was very clear to us that it was a yes from the beginning. It was a green light early on, about November last year, really. We confirmed that, because Joy as a church just seems to fit my calling. Some prophetic words over my life that we call to the city. I've been with you on before regarding what's your story. The whole diversity thing just makes me come alive. We love the makeup of Joy. She's a beautiful bride. And so just the fit felt right. The book of 2 Corinthians on the ministry of reconciliation is like my life book, and this just seems to be the right place for us to work out and preach the gospel in a way, in a place that we can live in the more that God has called us to. To have said yes might have been a lot more, it would have been more comfortable, more easy, particularly in the time that we were asked to take this over. And maybe we'll tell more of the story, but obviously, it got held up through COVID. Brendan and I both felt God speak very clearly to us to wait, not to push forward, not to move forward in presumption, not to move back in fear, but just to stand, a scripture from Exodus. So we stood for a number of months, and it wasn't easy months, because I think everybody under COVID, uncertainty was eating at them, but for both of us, uncertainty was on steroids, because what was on the other side of COVID was something very different for both families.
Sure.
But God just built faith within us to say yes, even when. So we agreed to put it on pause for about 6 months, and then Brendan came back, and maybe we can pick up the story on the other side of it. But the backstory, New Zealand, where the locks are at, where the vices are at. But at the end of the day, I think a decision made. What is best for the bride? What is best for Joy to the Nations? Was the thing that sparked us to say, now we need to jump, and we need to say yes.
Sure. We're talking to Brennan Locke and Glenn Weiss about handing over Joy to the Nations, the good bride. Brennan is wearing his all-black T-shirt, and Glenn is, I don't know, did you ask for a Springbok one?
I don't know. Ethan's lying, he's not wearing it.
All right, no, I'm joking. We'll be back in a moment.
The soundtrack of your life's journey. Kingfisher FM.
Talking about the process of handing over the Bride of Christ, Joy to the Nations, from Brendan Locke, who's sort of been at the helm for the last 17 odd years, handing it over to Glenn. It's been quite a process for you guys, because you announced on the night before Ramaphosa announced lockdown that, hey guys, we're moving on, and it's been quite a journey since then, hasn't it?
Yeah, I like what Glenn said. He said, what's good for the church, and what Glenn can't say it, but I can, and that is that every church is special. It's a bride, it's beautiful, and I really, the reason why we approached Glenn and Corin is because of their love and ability to serve all nations and all races and all income streams, and so to be able to hand over to someone like that is very special. And for me, it's really a sign of Jesus' love for his bride. Because, I mean, the story is Glenn and Brendan, but we're the minor players. Actually, it's about Jesus and his love for the bride, and we just get to serve. And I don't mean that flippantly, and it's a nice thing to. I really mean that. I think we are minor players in the story. When I look at this, could have really gone wrong. It could have not have happened. Under the pressure that Glenn is under in COVID, he could have taken the option of saying, "No, I'm not coming," and you just really realise that it's for every church, but it's very special to see the love that Jesus has for his bride, and he calls shepherds to lay down his life, their lives for a bride. And I think we're talking transitions, but really what we're talking about is men together with their families being obedient to Jesus in a local context, and I think it's very significant and very special.
And I guess we talk about it, and it sounds all easy and happy and whatever, but it's not been easy, has it?
No, it hasn't. Because the other side, transition requires movement of two people, and the New Zealand borders are closed at the moment with no next step. In other words, they're not talking about 3 months or 6 months. They're just not talking about it. And so I think what Tash and I and our family have had to walk through is what happens when you feel like you've obeyed God, when you've stepped out in faith, and there is great difficulty. In other words, normally what we would think is when we step out in faith, that God responds at some stage, that we know that faith pleases the Lord. I think for us, those are some great growth moments, because it causes you to think, well, maybe I didn't hear God right, maybe I was premature, maybe I left for the wrong reasons, because you cannot help but kind of self-reflect.
Search me, O God.
Yeah, exactly. And these are big things. We're talking about your family. I've got 4 kids. It's not. We took some faith steps when you're younger. It's a bit easier, but now it's more complicated. And I think the thing that I'm starting to learn, and that is that I think God is committed to taking away every security that's outside of him through a process of trials, and every trial is different and unique to people. It's not generic. And I think kind of what we're taking out of this is, can we really trust God for our future when the circumstances show that there is no hope or very little future, if you know what I mean? Can we really trust God that he can still position us, that he can still work things for his good? We can, we pastors, we know these scriptures, we quote them, we preach them, but actually when it's you and your family, and now you find yourself in this position, can you really trust God? And I think that's been a great wrestle for Tash and I, together with our family through this process. And I think the one thing that probably we've had to lean into at this stage are the partnerships and friendships that we've had. Because people say, well, you hear God, but I think under such, I'll use the word trauma because I think it is fairly traumatic, it's quite difficult to hear God under trauma or under circumstances like this. And so I've been able to just lean into really, really good friends and just say, hey, this is the situation. These are some of the circumstances. You can't hand over a church and take it back. Once you've made that decision, you've made that decision. And so basically Tash and I made the decision to hand over church without a next step that we could actually take. And you really are throwing yourself on the mercy of God. And I think the place where we're getting to is that's a safe place to be. So we are doing things. You're not just sitting at home, just waiting for a phone call. There's wonderful things that we are doing, but we don't feel like we have to grasp, or we have to try and make it work, or we have to be the architects of our future. And just as God positioned us most beautifully and accurately at Joy to the Nations. So we're going to trust him for our future.
Hope Radio, Kingfisher FM.